Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Latin Vibes. My name is Santi. This is Nico. If you're watching this on YouTube, then this is Out of Office. And I welcome you to today's iteration. It is the start of August. It's been a while since you've been back here, but that means that there's a lot to talk about. I think there are a few topics that I want to get into, but the main one is going to be salsa because I feel like you have a big passion for it. Am I right?
Yes,
What do
I
you
definitely
What
do.
do you like more, dancing salsa or listening to it?
I'm gonna say it's gonna be both because if I'm dancing salsa, I'm really enjoying it. I'm really loving it. But at the same time, I can get tired, and I don't want to be just dancing it the whole time,
Yeah,
right? And so I'll just sit and listen,
yeah.
right? So I feel like both are big ones, I don't
hmm
think dancing wins over listening or listening wins over dancing.
They both complement each other equally.
Yeah.
I want I want to talk about the history of salsa and what you know. What do you know about its history and where it comes from?
Okay. So I know that salsa's it's got important roots in South America, especially in areas that have a lot of African influence. Yes,
So would you say South American? Like what countries? Or do you? Because okay,
let's say Central South America, right? You know
do
what
you
I'm
count the
talking about.
Caribbean?
Caribbean, yes, definitely Caribbean,
Because I
yes.
don't feel like the Caribbean counts as Central America or South America.
Okay, Caribbean, Central America,
Yeah.
South America. Okay, yes. Um, so let's speak more about Cuba, right?
Okay.
Yeah, Cuba, it's got a lot of African culture.
Yeah.
We can look, for example, at Santeria, right, which is a religion that's very, very present in Cuba.
Yeah.
It comes mainly from Yoruba, yes, and it's evolved in something that's called through something that's called syncretism.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's become part, not part of, but I guess it's become entwined with Catholicism and Christianity.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's specifically in Cuba. Yes, and that's where Santeria comes from.
Yeah.
Right? So Santeria has gods and um, I guess entities called orishas. Yes,
Mhm.
which have become part of Catholic religious practices
Yeah.
as saints, basically.
Okay.
Yes. Now, what's still part of Santeria is a lot of the dancing.
Yeah.
Yes, a lot of the music as a religious practice,
Yeah.
and the enactment, right, of these entities, these energies through dancing.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So that's big, right? That's important because
Mhm.
that got carried up to New York, right? So let's talk about New York now, right? New York
Yeah.
is not per se the root, right, of salsa,
Yeah.
but it's the place where it converged. Yes,
Okay.
because a lot of Cubans, right, travel to New York, and also people from Puerto Rico,
Yeah.
right, went to New York.
Mhm.
And New York has been called the biggest city on earth or the capital of the world for I don't even know how long,
For a long time.
for
Yeah.
a long time because a lot of people have traveled there and
And you've been
settled
there. You've
there.
been there
Yes,
quite a few times.
I have. Yeah, I have.
Would you say it's a capital of the world?
I would say that I don't know because I haven't been to every city in the world, but I would say that it's got a strong South American vibe, in the sense that every neighborhood is its own little city,
Okay.
right? It's not like living here in Toronto where people have to travel, I guess, outside of their neighborhood, to I guess get whatever they need,
Yeah.
right? In terms of, for example, if I live in a suburban area in Toronto, then I gotta travel to the nearest Walmart or supermarket
Yeah.
to get what I need, right?
Sure. Yeah.
South America and New York, per extension,
Mhm.
don't work that way, right? Every neighborhood, it's got its own cultural aspects and also its own services,
Yeah.
So the family owned businesses, the small restaurants, the small convenience stores, that's pretty strong in New York.
Yeah.
And I think where I'm trying to go with this is that it gives us a sense of how strong culture is in New York. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it's not the most diverse city in the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it is very strong when it comes to cultural diversity, and I guess um and not enforcing it, but I guess multiplying it. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Yeah.
Like really seeing it thrive, right? So I'd say in that sense, New York is a wonderful city because no matter where you are, right, you
Yeah.
could be 2 hours away from Manhattan. You know,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
you'll still get a strong sense of I'm not just in the middle of nowhere in a like suburban neighborhood with nothing
Yeah.
to do. You know, I could still walk 5 minutes and go to the nearest store, go
Yeah.
to the nearest restaurant, you
Yeah.
know, and it's in the neighborhood,
Yeah.
right? All right, so let's go back to salsa.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, salsa definitely. What you're saying is true in the sense that it did start out in Cuba, mostly Cuba, and it's because of that African African origins of it. But maybe you didn't know this. Salsa, or what we now I'd say call salsa, is actually a mix of African music or Afro-Cuban music and Spanish music. If you listen to like Son Cubano is supposed to be the original salsa. You'll hear the bongos and all those important African instruments, but then you'll also hear the Spanish guitar, right? So then that mix traveled up to New York, where it was adopted by the Boricua and as well as the Cubans, and they made their own music, like with artists like Héctor Lavoe or Frankie Ruiz or like who else is from that New
Well,
York
like I got a good
generation?
example for you,
Yeah,
and there's a documentary, there's a movie about these two guys. I forgot their names to be
yeah.
honest. Something like maybe Ray Barreto
Oh yeah, Rey Barreto. Yeah,
and but there's it's like a duo,
yeah,
right? Yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
can't remember exactly who both these guys are, right? But what happens is that um, so Puerto Ricans and Cubans they get to New York, and
Yeah,
Puerto Rico's it's also got its strong African, you know, influence and
yeah,
culture, right? And they
yeah,
bring something called bomba, right? And if you look up, I mean, if you look up bomba on Spotify, YouTube, whatever, right,
yeah,
you'll hear strong African rhythms. You know, it's
yeah,
not really salsa anymore. You know, it's very strong percussion and not necessarily it doesn't necessarily have to have piano or guitar,
yeah,
right? It's different, you know.
yeah,
um so they get there, and where I was going with the with this duet, like according to the documentary, right, I'm not saying it's completely accurate, maybe it is, right?
yeah,
I doubt they'd make a documentary on fake information, you know. Maybe they
maybe,
would, right?
maybe, yeah,
But supposedly, right, there's this Puerto Rican guy, right, who's, you know, good at singing,
yeah,
and he wants to set up a band. So he's doing that. He's talking to his childhood friend who's basically grew up in New York,
yeah,
right, with their immigrant family, you know, and he's been studying for a long time
yeah.
to become a classical artist, right, playing
Classical
piano, you know,
musician.
classical musician,
Yeah,
right? And there's this whole conflict. Maybe it's a little bit drama in the documentary, right? With like him with his family, but he ends
yeah,
up deciding to take his piano into salsa, right?
yeah,
You know what
yeah,
I'm saying? So that's where there's a big mix, you know. And if you hear, I
yeah,
guess some of the narration of songs from back then,
yeah,
you know, a lot of them were in English because this started happening in New York, right?
yeah,
But the radio station would be like, oh, it's a catch up of, you know, rhythms and music and sounds, right?
yeah.
Because like you're saying, you know, they got a lot of African instruments, they got
Spanish
a lot
instruments.
of Spanish instruments, they got the piano, which I don't even know where it's from, you know, but
Yeah,
let's just call it European, right?
yeah,
Um, so that's where it started happening, you know, and we can't forget the indigenous presence either, you know, when it comes to the maracas, right, or the guido, you know, the
yeah,
raspe, right? There's a lot of instruments that come straight from
yeah,
South America,
yeah,
and there's just a big conversion and explosion of music
yeah.
that happens in New York.
And to fill in the gap there you left with the piano, what happened was these guys got to the U.S. and they started making not just salsa but music like el Boogaloo or cha cha cha. Peter Rodriguez. They like it like that, like oh baby. That's all salsa, right? But now we call it salsa, but really it was Boogaloo or rumba or whatever it was. So these guys being in New York with their big studios making, high quality music, they got together with the jazz players, right? So take for example the trumpet or the trombone or the saxophone or the piano.
Those are key.
All of those are classical instruments that don't come originally from Cuba or from Puerto Rico, but rather from the jazz players that were really big in those days. Salsa's, or what we know as salsa, and I've been saying that a lot because in Cuba, salsa isn't known as salsa, you know? So what salsa is for us is son cubano or son montuano. I think that's what it is
Montuno.
too. Montuno, eso, montuno. Because it's not salsa. Salsa is a term that they came up with in the States, and eventually it went down through South America, with Colombia being one of the biggest exporters of salsa. They adopted it through artists like Joe Arroyo or Grupo Niche and exported it against the world, or even Venezuela too. If you look at Oscar de Leon is a big salsa player, key, that was making music from Caracas, right? So what I'm trying to get at is that Cuba started off as this. I mean, not Cuba. Salsa started off as this rural movement where Afro-Cubans were just playing the songs that they knew. And the songs that they knew, like you said, originated from their traditional African beliefs, whether it's the Yoruba people or the Beni people that were from southern Africa, because all of them converged in this one country. They brought these beliefs, they brought them to Havana once slavery was abolished, and they intermingled with the Spanish upper class, creating this hybrid sound that's known today as salsa or son cubano, eventually making its way to New York, where it became Boogaloo, or it became rumba, or it became the cha-cha-cha, right? Eventually becoming the salsa we know today through artists like Celia Cruz, like Joe Arroyo, like Frankie Ruiz, El Gran Combo de Puerto Rico. All of these artists took from previous generations, improved on it, and made their own sound to the point where today we have many different kinds of salsa. You have what, for example, our grandfather, he calls it salsa pesada, which is literally translated as heavy salsa. How would you describe that kind of salsa?
Yeah, it's very rhythmic. There's a lot of definitely percussion.
Yeah.
A lot of brass as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd say it's got a really strong focus on the instrumental side of things, right?
Yeah.
Then there's a little bit of a different salsa, which is more focused on the narration of a story, I'd say Willie Colón is part of, or Héctor Lavoe, right?
Yeah.
And then there's more modern salsa, which is more romantic,
Yeah.
right? And even nowadays, speaking about the diversity of genres in salsa, there's salsa celtica, for example, right? Like Celtic salsa, right? And it's just like this group that started making salsa using rhythms from like Scotland or Ireland, and implement or like infusing it with some instruments from that area.
Yeah.
It's fire.
And today we've been left with the result of all this. So salsa isn't actually as old as we think it is. Salsa really originated in the 40s and 50s, and it wasn't even known as salsa at the time. But today, it's become a powerful force that I'd say is being rediscovered by this generation thanks to Bad Bunny's new album. Like, what's that song called? Baile Inolvidable. The salsa song he made? It's a really big song. And I like it. I don't necessarily have to like the whole album. It's good. But what it is doing is it's bringing back the focus on salsa. Because, let's be honest, the newer or the younger generations don't feel the need to pay as much attention to it as, say, older generations. Like, if you look at our grandparents or our parents, they're much more in tune with salsa than, say, I am, or even, we learn thanks to them, but then somebody our age would, right? You get what I'm saying?
I get what you're saying. I mean, I think I don't have a clear answer because there's new genres constantly coming out, right?
Yeah.
So maybe like when our parents were growing up, right, they had lambada, and they had these different genres that they were exposed to.
Yeah.
So they might have started choosing those ones over old ones as well, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's all personal choice. I think for sure having a salsa sound in a reggaeton album that
Yeah.
came out just now, right, in the last few years,
Yeah.
definitely does bring attention to salsa. Right, definitely brings attention to it. But of course, it's all up to the people, and their decisions
Yeah.
on like what they want to do, right?
Yeah. No.
Excuse me for a second.
And it's interesting that you start talking about reggaeton or really just Latin music because it's diversified so much to the point that now we have practically every kind of music genre made through a Latin lens. Think about rock en español. Our parents are also very big into rock en español. Rock en español is a big genre from that time, you know.
Yeah.
Think about Shakira or Los Hombres G or all these people that made really popular music. And it's really interesting to me how it all kind of loops back to the US. Because we think of these genres as being completely native to Latin America. But maybe that's not the case, I feel like there's a lot of influence from the US, and it's also important to note that the US is literally 1/3 Latin. What we think of when we think of the US, we think, oh, white majority, whatever. And when you actually go, you realize that hey, most of the people here speak Spanish. You've been to the States a few times. How does it feel to go and not feel like you're in the States? Or what's your experience been like?
Yeah. I think you're right. I think it's definitely super diverse. But I want to go back to that point you were making about music coming from different places because you're right. If we don't just focus on salsa, right, we could open up what popular music's been like in Colombia. And of course, there's a lot of music that's really locally made, right?
Yeah.
Such as like cumbia, and bachata, merengue, right? All of these rhythms that are really, really from South America.
Yeah.
But then there's also music that's more kind of like ballads,
Yeah.
I guess I don't even know exactly how to describe that genre because I don't know how. I don't think there's a strong comparison, or a strong pair in English, but like people like Jose, Camilo Sesto.
With like, yeah. No,
yeah.
I mean, I feel like
maybe more in Europe, because
those guys,
actually
most of those people were European.
yeah,
so-
actually, Camilo Sesto, right?
Yeah.
He was from Spain, and there's this other French artist. What was his name?
Joe Dessin.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think back in that time, I don't know what time that was, maybe 50s, 60s, 70s.
70s.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
very common for those artists that were singing ballads
To sing it in a bunch of different
singing
languages.
in many different languages,
Yeah.
and a lot of those became big hits in South America. Big hits, and they really became part of the popular culture for that generation.
Yeah, I definitely do feel that South America is more similar to Europe than it is to the US or Canada. Or even, I don't know, Mexico does feel quite a bit more North American. But if you look at countries like Colombia or like, I don't know, whatever Latin American country, it feels like it's more ready to receive European culture in a sense. I don't know.
Yeah,
But it's interesting that you talk about regional music because listening to, like, for example, música popular, that's from Colombia, it sounds a lot like Mexican music. So it seems like we're constantly witnessing how music is evolving, especially in Latin America and all over the world. I mean, we haven't focused on other places, but this is constantly happening. People are constantly adding new rhythms, new sounds. They're seeing things differently. How does that make you feel?
You feel pretty good.
Yeah.
I like it. I like the fact that there is a lot of cultural exchange.
Yeah, there is.
Colonialism is horrible, right? But at the same time, I feel very privileged because I can communicate with like
A lot of different people.
a big part of the world, you
Yeah.
know, just by being able to speak Spanish and English.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
so being able to travel to different countries in South America, Central America, the Caribbean, and being able to communicate
Is a
has
great
really
advantage.
opened up my
Yeah.
doors to meeting a lot of people and
Yeah.
living very nice experiences. Um, of course, I'd rather, you know, there was a stronger focus or celebration of indigenous cultures and
Yeah.
languages, and I hope that's something that we see more.
Yeah.
But of course, I do also want to say that, you know, I feel privileged by being able to communicate with so many different people.
Yeah. And I'd say don't even look too far. Like, for example, I've talked about this a lot, but being in a city like the one we're in, Toronto, opens up the door to meeting a lot of different people. You know, just yesterday at the gym, I met somebody from Cuba, for example, and I talked to that person about salsa and all this, all that. Or the other day, I met somebody from wherever, you know, and we kind of take all these cultures and all these people that we meet, we put them together, and we make a new culture, a new tradition.
Yeah.
And that's the point of, I guess that's the main theme of today's episode. How by interacting or opening our minds to different cultures and people and ideas, we can actually make something, I don't want to say better, because it might be better in a way, but something unique,
Yeah.
an evolution of it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I was at rattle making workshop
Yeah.
maybe 2 weeks ago,
Yeah.
and it was led by, you know, indigenous people, right? People who carry knowledge.
Yeah.
And one of the things that the knowledge keeper said, she said, "Hey, like, this is all cultural exchange. You know,
Yeah.
this is not appropriation.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
This is sharing. You know, and it's reciprocal, right?
Yeah. I agree.
So
That's important.
yeah, yeah. There's definitely a lot of difficulties when it comes to our day-to-day lives and our current world, because there's a lot of uh, like lack of equity, you know,
Okay.
and not everybody's got the same opportunities, and history has benefited different people in different ways, and it's
Yeah.
harmed us in different ways as well.
Yeah.
So it's not as simple as saying, you know,
This is good. This is bad.
yeah, like, yeah, or, you know, I guess it's not as simple as saying just getting together, you know, and communicating culture is already good,
Yeah.
right? Because there has to be a focus and a realization
Yeah.
that history has been really tough on certain people, and it's really important to be clear on the fact that there's got to be communication and sharing and
Yeah.
reciprocity,
I
right?
respect.
Yeah, exactly.
Understanding that just because we see things differently doesn't mean that the way somebody else does it is wrong.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
I feel that that's
exactly.
something that we can take away from the history of colonialism that the Americas and Europe has, and even every country. You know,
Yeah,
like
everybody's
take
had
Japan.
colonialism. Yeah.
Like Japan colonized Korea not too long ago, and that's not something that we talk about too often because it's not really on our part of the world, but it is something that happened and was brutal, right? And the way I want to end off this episode is by sharing that accepting and trying to understand or having empathy is important to our identity, not just as people from Canada or Toronto, but rather our global identity as humans, as people that walk this earth together, regardless of being thousands of kilometers away, right?
Yep.
And that's how I want to end us off, by sharing that love and spreading the positivity through salsa, for example. A music genre that's super important to many different land cultures today, that arose from this mixing and this cross pollination of different genres, right? Is there anything that you want to say before we end this off?
Just, you know, love music.
Yeah.
Love salsa.
Yeah.
Cumbia as well. Love cumbia. Love music. That's it.
Yeah. And that's awesome. Thank you
Yeah.
very much for being on the show. This was Out of Office if you are on YouTube. If you're on the live stream, this is Latin Vibes. Tune in to see more episodes. I forgot to introduce, but I'm Santi. I work as a software engineer at Logic Pod, and this is Nico. You work as
QA, quality assurance.
Yeah.
Logic pod.
usually that goes at the start, but today we did it the other way around. Check out the other episodes. Thank you guys for tuning in, and I'll see you next week. Have a good one.